Welcome to the final session, the valedictory session. So we have two very distinguished speakers in the valedictory session, and it's a privilege for me to say that we welcome both Mr. Ajit Balakrishnan and Mr. Montague Singh Ahluwalia. I don't think either of them need an introduction, so I'm not going to do that. Both of them are extremely distinguished. But let me just welcome both of them. Let me request Sugandha to please welcome Mr. Ahluwalia to the final session with a bouquet.
Way past that.
I know. Abhilasha, could you please do the same for Mr. Ajit Balakrishnan? Thank you, Sugandha and Abhilasha. This is the wrapping up session for what I think has been a wonderful conference since the morning. We've had three very good sessions. The first one was on spectrum, the second one was regulation and institutions, and the third one, which just concluded, innovation, service delivery, and impacts. So this is kind of wrapping up. I'll request Mr. Ajit Balakrishnan to go first. As you know, he's the founder of Rediff. And welcome you once again. Look forward to your talk.
Thank you. Mic is okay? I'm going to first lead you to a little bit of history, Can you hear me at the back? Okay. Here is it. Imagine you are in 1917, okay? Imagine you are in 1917. Somebody called Mohandas Gandhi arrived in India. He was at that, just transport yourself to that time. Don't add information you already know. He returned from South Africa. He answers a call for help from peasants in Champaran in Bihar. 7 months later, he's a national leader. As we all know this, as schoolboys we were taught this. How would you have interpreted it? Gandhiji later said that Champaran used to be full of indigo plantations until 1917. The tenant was bound by law to plant 3 out of every 20 parts of land with indigo, and that led to oppression. He wrote that in My Experiments with Truth. This again we know as schoolboys. But what did happen is British planters who held sharecroppers, they forced them to either grow 3 out of 20,000 or else. The peasant did not have a choice. And this we felt as Indians a great injustice. But look back again at that time, 1856, a 18-year-old William Perkin was trying to synthesize quinine, and this is a story about technology and society interplaying together, okay? From coal tar, he got a purple-colored solution, which he discovered is an effective dye for textiles. That was a replacement for indigo. The synthetic textile industry was born at that moment, 1856. But it could not be produced effectively. Many people tried. 1870, Bayer synthesis didn't work. 1880, lab scale didn't work. 1890, Zurich Polytechnic tries a method, too expensive. Finally, 1895, when the discovery was made of a method, at that time Indian exports were 187,000 kilos, okay, and 650,000 acres were planted with it. Now, as soon as the Bayer-Hext master process started, within 10 years, the Indian indigo industry went bankrupt. Okay? So underlying the agitation at Champaran was a technological breakthrough which was going on somewhere else. 1917 coincided with the time when, by then, Indian exports have dropped to 11,000 and the price per kg had come to half. So, and people were destitute in that area in Bihar. Okay? Now, this is Gandhiji declared victory. He says, in My Experiments with Truth, the Teen Khathiya system in existence for about a century was thus abolished. My question is, looking back, did we take the wrong lessons out of Gandhiji's story? Because what really happened? The German trajectory after that indigo synthesis, okay? By the 1930s, they discovered that the red azo dye also kills streptococci bacteria in mice. The active ingredient in that was sulfanilamide, creates a pharmaceutical industry. Okay? Institutions which went with it, the patent system, process engineering, chemistry teaching. Now the A inside Bayer, okay, AGFA and BASF till today stands for aniline. And you know what aniline stands for? Hindi Neel. Even today. So these company names are examples. I always wonder if Gandhiji has said, let us not go on strike. Let's go to Calcutta. There were some chemists who recently returned from England with PhDs. Let's do the synthesis and solve the problem. How would Indian history have changed? Now, this is something I keep hearing all the time. Now, here, we heard a lot of hopes being said for the mobile app, mobile economy, and so on. What the internet really is, it increases societal productivity in the same way that the spinning jenny did in the first industrial revolution, that the continuous flow plant did for the chemical revolution, that the moving assembly line did for the mass production era. So it's important to understand it is not apps, it is not mobile, it is the information intermediary which is doing the job. That's a new animal, and that's an animal which I wrote the section on that in the Indian IT Act, I know, and I think it's 90% of Indian court cases are around that particular section, because judges could not, even today, do not understand. This guy is not a dealer. This is a new animal. The early days of the factory had a similar problem. Why the factory contributed to productivity was at one place it could concentrate resources. It could make people work on time as opposed to letting out system. And horribly, it could employ child labor, which was cheaper than men. So all of those reasons, it's very important to understand what drives productivity in the internet era is the information intermediary, and that animal needs to be nurtured and protected, and it is not mobile apps or web apps or any of those things. Now, what is important is, this is an astonishing figure somebody gave me. In the United States, the export earnings from digital services, this might be of interest to you, in 2011, the export earnings was $356 billion. Are you aware of that? That is all the iTunes export and the Google ads export is $356 billion. And this is an opportunity that we have seen in front of us from 1995, and we are letting it slip. What happens? I think Google is an archetypal artifact for that. Amazon is another one. But in many, many markets, this information intermediary, Google, Amazon are all that are appearing. Of course, this is a new challenge for our that lady from the Competition Commission is not here. I wish she had seen this, because most of them are also winner-take-all markets. And competition law today cannot handle that. I think we have modernized the competition law, but I think they still have to figure out how to deal with these. Many of them, even in India, are now 98% market shareholders. Now, the puzzle of India's internet, I've heard many different numbers today about what India's internet penetration is. This is the truth. India's internet penetration is 11% of the population. 11%. It is some eminent countries are ahead of us. Indonesia with 23%. Russia, Brazil are ahead of us. Of course, China and the United States are far, far ahead of us. So there's a puzzle. Why is India's internet, this includes mobile plus PC, incidentally. And this is a slide from Mary Meeker's presentation in San Francisco, middle of last year. And I counter-checked it. This is the truth. So what do we do? So we have to do something. First ask the question, why is India's penetration so low? The simple answer is, at today's prices and bandwidth, most Indians cannot afford it. I'm speaking in front of many economists today, but this is the income breakdown from the National Council of Applied Economic Research, how India firms spend. You can see people are very challenged. If the target price for broadband in India, trust me, cannot exceed 100 rupees per month. And at that price, you must deliver what is broadband. This is the correct definition, the US FCC definition. Download speed must be greater than 4 Mbps, and upload speed must be greater than 1 Mbps. If this is a criteria, how many broadband users are in India? I estimate 2 million. Okay, 2 million, opposed to China's 300 million. So this is something that we need to do. So your next question will be, why is it so expensive? Here is the answer. Take the red line. What people are doing, if I'm sitting in Bombay, and Bombay, where I live, has the best internet connectivity in all of India, I can tell you that. if I live in Bombay, I do something on the internet, let's say I need to search or do something, it immediately goes through the spectrum to the cell tower. Okay? From the cell tower, it goes to the base of another cell tower using, in Bombay, typically E1 lines. Those of you from Telecom, you know, it's a very thin line. Okay? At best, it transports 25 to 56 kbps. 60% of Bombay's cell tower to cell tower connection is E1 lines. There is no fiber on the ground. That is in Bombay city. And from there, it goes by extremely expensive undersea cable to google.com or whichever the site is, and comes all the way back. What should it be? It should have gone by Wi-Fi. It's expensive one time, but very cheap to user cost. Through Wi-Fi, it must, through optical fiber, it go to the cell tower, to the next cell tower. From there, they will go to a site in India, and then your price for that kind of bandwidth will be less than 100 rupees. But I have sat in on meetings where telecom industry representatives, I sat in there as an internet representative, kept telling people like Ravi Shankar and others, sir, please do not install fiber, because if you do, our 3G business will be bankrupt. Now that is complete crap, as people who are in the telecom know. Without that fiber backbone, 3G or 4G will not exist in this country. Will not exist. The backhaul has to be fiber. But the moment a telecom company says, I'm going to invest in fiber, Wall Street will knock its prices down 75%. The fiber return is at least 35 to 40 years. So this is the kind of thing only governments can do. So full speed to the national fiber plan. Without it, there is no broadband in India. Okay? Now, finally, what is the promise of internet? I think here is an example. Today, a radiologist in Bombay gets an income of 3 to 4 lakhs. If you go to him to see whether there's a colonic polyp, he will charge you at least 5 to 10,000. There are examples at Siemens lab where a machine learning system can detect it to 96% accuracy. If you deploy that as a device, you know what the cost of doing this will be? 10 paise. That is a breakthrough that internet companies can provide you. Okay? But this needs very high-speed broadband to send this. Second, you know, apart from running Rediff and being chairman of IIM Calcutta, I also teach in this little school where I'm learning some things myself. This is next to the Bombay Sassoon docks. I have 51 students, of which 48 are Muslim. Okay, and the mothers are all maids in schools, and the fathers are mostly fishermen in Sassoon dock. They're the brightest kids I've ever seen. I went through the IIM systems. I know what bright kids mean. I was a student at IIM. I can see the challenges that teachers face. If within the same class of 51, I've identified at least 5 or 6 will make it to IITs. They're in class 8 still, easily. Mothers are maids, but they're innately so bright. The other last 5, I have no hope. But this is true for all students everywhere. But to teach them in a class, one teacher can't teach them. After this teaching, I have great respect for any teacher in any class. How do you deal with this? We need some ways through broadband methods to aid this teacher, not to replace her. Okay? So I'm trying to devise some ways. The second example, this is an institution where I'm chairman of the board. In IIM Calcutta, you all see us from the headlines our graduates always get, $200,000 salary, etc., etc. We produce 450 students every year for the PGP course. They are snapped up in 3 days. This year's placement took 3 days. Goldman Sachs flies in and takes 15 people. Morgan Stanley takes 20. But very few people know that IIM Calcutta annually graduates 2,500 people through the online course. 2,500 last year. Okay, this is done from cities as remote. We have a center in Jalandhar, Amritsar, Ludhiana, Hardwar, all kinds of Dehradun, Meerut. So these are people who are working there, who attend this program, 1A program, and take a diploma from us, but completely online. They go to centers which are connected by satellite. Now, our challenge now is to make sure that, you probably know that IIM is only 3% of the output of MBAs. Do you know that? The balance 4,500 are so-called private business schools, which we all sneer at. But I keep telling everyone they're all Indian children. Never forget that. So our faculty is very socialist minded, so am I. So we want to deliver our great teachers. We tell them, why an audience of 500? We need an audience of 500,000. So we want to deliver this to all the other 4,000 management schools, if possible for free. Some courses like derivatives trading, there's a very narrow market and only few people can teach it. But there is no broadband to deliver it. India